The conference room in Geneva smelled like expensive coffee and nervous sweat. Dr. Sarah Martinez checked her notes for the 15th time, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the papers on the podium. Outside the reinforced windows, three alien vessels hung in the sky like impossible sculptures, their hulls catching the afternoon light in ways that hurt to look at directly. First contact. Humanity's first official diplomatic meeting with an extraterrestrial civilization. And Sarah, a xenolinguist who'd spent 20 years preparing for a moment she'd never truly believed would come, was scheduled to deliver the opening address. 5 minutes, Dr. Martinez, her assistant James whispered, touching her elbow. Are you ready? Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Around her, the hall filled with representatives from every nation on Earth. Military officers stood at attention along the walls. Scientists clutched tablets displaying real-time translation algorithms. Somewhere in the back, her wife Alina sat with their teenage daughter Maya, both wearing the visitor badges that had required 3 months of security clearance to obtain. The aliens, the Velkari as they called themselves, would arrive any moment. Initial communications had been promising. They came in peace, seeking trade and cultural exchange. They had been monitoring Earth's transmissions for decades, learning human languages, studying human customs. They wanted to establish formal diplomatic relations. It all seemed too good to be true. Sarah's academic mind kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Sarah felt her breath catch. They were beautiful. That was her first thought. The Velkari moved with fluid grace, their bodies vaguely humanoid but distinctly alien. Tall and slender, with skin that shifted between shades of deep blue and violet depending on the angle of light. Their faces were angular, dominated by large eyes that held too many colors to name. Each wore what appeared to be formal attire, flowing garments that seemed to move independently of air currents. The lead Velkari, Ambassador Zyxthar, according to the briefing documents, approached the center of the room. When he spoke, his voice resonated in a way that bypassed Sarah's ears entirely, speaking directly into her mind through the translation device he wore. People of Earth, we come in friendship and curiosity. Your species has reached a threshold. You look to the stars with wonder and determination. We would walk that path with you if you will have us. The room erupted in controlled applause. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was it. This was everything humanity had dreamed of. She stepped to the podium, her notes clutched in suddenly sweaty hands. The lights seemed brighter than they had during rehearsal. She opened her mouth to speak. That's when her brain exploded. Not literally, though in the moment it felt that way. A supernova of pain erupted behind her right eye, so intense that the world went white. Sarah heard herself make a sound, not words, just a raw animal noise of confusion and terror. The left side of her body stopped responding to commands. Her leg buckled. She reached out with her right hand to catch herself on the podium, but her left arm hung useless at her side. Papers scattered as she fell, a cascade of carefully prepared words tumbling meaninglessly to the floor. Sarah, Alina's voice, distant and distorted. The room tilted. Faces swam in her vision, human faces twisted in shock and horror, alien faces utterly still, processing, analyzing. Sarah tried to speak, to say she was fine, this was just nerves, but her mouth wouldn't form the shapes. Sounds came out, wrong sounds, broken sounds. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up into Ambassador Zyxthar's face, those impossible eyes studying her with an intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. "Medical assistance," he said, his mental voice calm and clear. This human requires immediate medical assistance. The world fragmented after that. Stretcher, ambulance, the terrifying wail of sirens. Alina's face hovering above her, tears streaming, saying things Sarah couldn't quite parse. The words came through garbled, like someone had scrambled the frequencies. Going. Hospital. Okay. Love you. Maya's okay. Just hold on. Sarah tried to respond, tried to say she was scared, that something was catastrophically wrong, that her left side had simply disappeared from existence. But the only thing that came out was, blah, nah, can. Can't. Well, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Doctors and nurses moved with practiced urgency, shouting terms Sarah's broken brain couldn't quite capture. Stroke, ischemic, clot, left hemisphere, language center, motor cortex. She drifted in and out of consciousness. During one of her lucid moments, she saw Ambassador Zyxthar standing in the corner of her room, perfectly still, watching. Human doctors tried to shoo him away, but he didn't move. I will remain, his mental voice cut through the chaos. She was speaking to us when this occurred. It is our responsibility to witness. It's not your fault, Alina said, her voice thick with tears. It's just, these things happen, bad luck, bad timing. But Sarah saw something in the alien's posture, guilt maybe, or determination, something that suggested he disagreed with Alina's assessment. Then the medications pulled her under again, and she dreamed of words she couldn't speak and stars she'd never reach. Part 2. The hardest language. Sarah woke to find her world divided. The right side functioned, sort of. She could move her right arm and leg, though they felt weak, disconnected. The left side might as well have belonged to someone else. It simply refused to acknowledge her brain's commands. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was the language. Words existed in her head. She could think them, understand them, feel them pressing against the inside of her skull, demanding release. But the pathway between thought and speech had been severed. When she tried to talk, what came out was gibberish. Knee, help, the, buh. Alina sat beside her bed, holding her working hand, crying silently. Maya stood in the corner, her 15-year-old face trying so hard to be brave and failing completely. Dr. Rashid, the neurologist, showed them brain scans with calm professional detachment. The stroke affected the left hemisphere, specifically Broca's area and the surrounding motor cortex. This is why Dr. Martinez is experiencing expressive aphasia. She can understand language but has difficulty producing it. The paralysis on her left side is also typical of this type of stroke. Will she recover? Alina asked. The silence that followed was devastating. Some function may return with intensive therapy, Dr. Rashid said carefully. But I need you to understand that strokes of this severity often result in permanent deficits. Doctor. Martinez may never regain full use of her left side or complete verbal fluency. Never. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them she could still think, still understand, that she was trapped in a broken body with a broken voice, but her mind was intact. What came out instead was, nah, fuck. Everyone stared. That one word had come out perfectly clear. Interestingly, Dr. Rashid said, profanity often uses different neural pathways. Many aphasia patients retain the ability to swear even when other language is impaired. Well, Alina said with a wet laugh, at least we know you're still in there, love. Sarah wanted to laugh or cry, she wasn't sure which. Instead, she just squeezed Alina's hand with her good fingers and tried not to think about the doctoral thesis she'd never defend. The languages she'd studied for decades that were now locked behind a wall of scrambled neurons. The historic first contact speech she'd never deliver. The door opened. Sarah expected another nurse, another doctor with another devastating prognosis. Instead, Ambassador Zyxthar ducked through the doorway, his tall frame folding with alien grace to fit the human-scaled room. Elena tensed. "I'm sorry, but this isn't a good time." "I have come with an offer," Zyxthar said, his mental voice bypassing Sarah's broken speech centers to communicate directly. "If Dr. Martinez is willing to accept assistance." Sarah's heart rate spiked. The monitors beeped their alarm. A nurse poked her head in, saw the alien, and retreated with wide eyes. "What kind of assistance?" Elena asked warily. Zyxthar moved closer to Sarah's bed. Up close, she could see that his skin wasn't just shifting colors. It was displaying patterns, complex fractals that seemed to convey emotion or meaning. Currently, they pulsed with something that felt like concern. The Velkari have encountered neurological damage in many species across the galaxy. We have developed technologies that can bridge the gap between thought and expression. They cannot repair damaged tissue, but they can create new pathways around the damage. "You're talking about alien technology," Maya said, speaking for the first time. "Experimental alien technology." "Yes," Zyxthar said simply. "And I am talking about using Dr. Martinez as the first human subject. The risks are significant, but so are the potential benefits." Sarah tried to speak. "I want. No," Elena said firmly. "Absolutely not. We don't know anything about your technology. What if it makes things worse?" "It could not be much worse," Sarah managed to force out, the words coming in painful bursts. "Want to try." Elena looked at her wife with anguish. "Sarah, you could die." Sarah met her eyes and managed a lopsided smile with the right side of her face. "Already dead, this, not living." "That's the brain injury talking," Elena protested. "You're depressed, you're not thinking clearly, thinking." "Fine," Sarah interrupted. "Stuck in broken body." Dr. Rashid entered, having been summoned by the concerned nurse. He listened to Zyxthar's explanation with the careful neutrality of a scientist presented with revolutionary but unproven technology. "I'd need to see your research," he said. "Safety protocols, success rates, potential complications." "I will provide everything," Zyxthar said. "But I must be honest. We have never attempted this procedure on a human. Your neurology is similar to many species we have treated successfully, but not identical. There is approximately a 17% chance of serious adverse effects, and an 83% chance of improvement," Sarah forced out. Elena buried her face in her hands. "I can't lose you." "Already lost," Sarah said, each word an effort. "Help me." Back, Part 3. The bridge, the Velkari medical facility, materialized inside the hospital like something out of a science fiction fever dream. Human doctors and nurses watched in awe as alien technicians assembled equipment that seemed to fold space and manipulate light in ways that violated several laws of physics. Sarah lay on a hybrid medical platform, half human gurney, half alien suspension field, while sensors mapped her neural activity with terrifying precision. Zyxthar stood at the head of the platform, his long fingers moving through holographic displays only he could see. "The device will integrate with your brain stem and frontal cortex," he explained, his mental voice soothing. "It will not heal the damage, but it will create new neural pathways that bypass the affected areas. Think of it as a bridge over broken terrain." "Will it hurt?" Maya asked. She'd insisted on being present despite Elena's protests. "The installation, no. The learning process afterward." Zyxthar's skin patterns flickered with something that might have been sympathy. "That will be difficult. Dr. Martinez will essentially need to relearn how to use language, how to move. The device provides the pathway, but she must walk it herself. No different, then. Now, Sarah managed to say. There is one more thing, Zyxthar said. The device will create a minor neural link between us. During the initial integration period, I will need to remain physically near you to help calibrate the pathways. This means I will sense your thoughts, your emotions. And you will sense mine. It is necessary for the procedure, but it is intimate in ways your species may find uncomfortable. Alina bristled. How intimate? Not like that, Sarah said, the words coming slightly easier now that she'd had a few days of practice. He means mental thoughts. Correct, Zyxthar confirmed. I will know when you are frustrated, frightened, in pain. You will know the same of me. This connection will fade as the device integrates fully, but for the first weeks we will be neurologically linked. Sounds fun, Sarah said with her broken smile. The procedure took 6 hours. Sarah was conscious the entire time, watching through sedated haze as Velkari surgeons, if that's what they were, worked with instruments that looked like solidified light. She felt pressure, strange tingling sensations, moments where her thoughts seemed to echo weirdly in her own skull. And through it all, she felt Zyxthar's presence. Not invasive, not controlling, just there. A calm point of stability in the chaos of her rewiring brain. His emotions bled through, professional focus, deep concern, and underneath it all, a current of guilt so profound it took her breath away. Why guilt? She tried to think at him. The response came back immediately, thought to thought. Because you were speaking to my people when this happened. Because I invited you to this moment that broke you. Because I am Velkari and we value communication above all else, and I watched your ability to communicate shatter before my eyes. Not your fault, perhaps, but I will help fix it anyway. When Sarah woke from the post-procedure rest, the world had changed. She could feel the device, a strange presence at the back of her mind, like having a word on the tip of your tongue but everywhere at once. Try to speak, Dr. Rashid urged. Sarah opened her mouth. I can. The words came slowly, but they came. Full words, clear words. I can talk. Alina burst into tears. Maya laughed with relief. The human medical staff applauded, but Sarah barely noticed. She was staring at Zyxthar, feeling his exhaustion, his relief, his quiet satisfaction. And she knew without words that he'd been awake for the entire 6 hours, never breaking concentration, holding the neural link steady with sheer force of will. Thank you, she said clearly. His skin patterns rippled with colors she was starting to understand meant pleasure, satisfaction. Now the real work begins. Part 4. Relearning everything physical therapy was hell. Sarah had expected that. What she hadn't expected was how much harder it would be with an alien consciousness passively observing her struggles. Left leg, the therapist instructed. Try to take weight on it. Sarah gritted her teeth and pushed. The leg trembled, barely holding. Through the neural link, she felt Zyxthar's concentration, his mind somehow helping guide the signals from the device to her damaged motor cortex. You're trying to force it, his thought came through. Like pushing a boulder uphill. Try instead to flow around the obstacle. That's not how bodies work. It is how Velkari bodies work. And now, with the device, how yours can work too. Sarah wanted to argue, but another part of her, the scientist who'd spent 2 decades studying alien communication, was fascinated. She adjusted her approach, trying to think of movement not as command and response, but as water finding a path through stone. Her left leg moved. Just an inch, barely anything, but it moved. Holy shit, the therapist breathed. How did you, alien, technology, Sarah panted, and stubbornness. The speech therapy was almost worse. Sarah had been a xenolinguist, someone who spoke 7 human languages fluently and had studied the theoretical frameworks for dozens more. Now she struggled with basic English. "Describe this picture," the speech therapist said, holding up an image of a cat. Cat feline small, mammal domestic. Sarah felt the words arrange themselves correctly in her mind, then fragment slightly on their way to her mouth. Pet, common, earth. Animal, very good. Now try a full sentence about what the cat is doing. Sarah looked at the picture. The cat was sitting in a sunbeam-looking content. Simple observation, simple sentence, except nothing was simple anymore. The cat is. She paused, feeling Zeichsthar's presence in the background of her mind. Sitting, in light, sun. The cat is sitting in sunlight, it looks. Content, happy. Excellent progress, Dr. Martinez. But Sarah felt Zeichsthar's concern through the link. The words had come, but they'd been more effortful than they should have been 3 weeks post-procedure. The device was working, but not perfectly. Something in her particular human neurology wasn't meshing quite right with the Velkari technology. That night, as Sarah lay in her hospital bed, she felt Zeichsthar's mental presence strengthen. He'd been spending his nights in a room adjacent to hers, maintaining the neural link even during sleep. "I need to adjust the calibration," his thought came through. "Your neural architecture is more rigid than most species we've treated. The pathways I've created are fighting against your brain's existing structure. Is that bad? It's different. Humans are remarkably adaptable, but also remarkably stubborn. Your neurons want to use the old, broken pathways even though new ones are available. It's almost as if your brain refuses to admit the original routes are damaged." Sarah thought about that. About human denial, human determination, the human refusal to accept limitations. That sounds like us. "It is what makes you remarkable," Zeichsthar thought back, "and frustrating." Over the following weeks, they developed a routine. Mornings were physical therapy, Sarah pushing her body to remember how to walk, how to use her left arm, how to exist in space without tilting dangerously to one side. Zeichsthar would sit in the corner, his mental presence a steady anchor, occasionally offering suggestions based on Velkari understanding of neural plasticity. Afternoons were speech therapy, language therapy, cognitive therapy. Sarah relearned how to structure sentences, how to access vocabulary, how to tell stories. She'd been a professional communicator, someone who made her living translating between languages and cultures. Now she struggled to explain what she'd had for breakfast, but slowly, incrementally, she improved. "I went to physical therapy this morning," she told Elena one day, the sentence coming out clear and complete. "I walked 20 steps with minimal assistance. The therapist says I'm progressing faster than expected." Elena hugged her carefully, mindful of the still weak left side. "You're amazing, you know that." Through the link, Sarah felt Zeichsthar's satisfaction, his pride in her progress, and something else, growing friendship. They'd been neurologically linked for over a month now, and somewhere in the constant presence of each other's thoughts, they'd become genuinely close. That evening, Sarah asked him something that had been bothering her. "Why are you doing this? You could have returned to your ship, sent a medical team." "Why stay?" Zeichsthar was quiet for a long moment, his skin patterns cycling through colors Sarah was learning to read. "Among my people, communication is sacred. It is how we understand the universe, how we connect with others, how we know we are not alone in the vastness of space. When I saw you lose your communication, saw it break in real time." He paused. "It was like watching someone die. I could not leave you in that darkness. But I'm not Velkari. No, you are human, and I am learning that humans are remarkable precisely because you break and then refuse to stay broken. The Velkari would find such an injury devastating, possibly fatal. But you. His mental voice held something like awe. You look at your broken communication pathways and say, I will find another way. This is worth studying, worth assisting, worth witnessing. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Zix, for seeing me, for staying. Always came the thought. We witness each other now. Part 5. When worlds collide, Sarah had been in rehabilitation for 6 weeks when the first crisis hit. She was in the physical therapy room, using parallel bars to practice walking, when alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. What's happening? Her therapist asked, looking around in confusion. Through the neural link, Sarah felt Zyxthar's sudden spike of alarm. There's been an incident at the Geneva facility. Protesters. Violence. Sarah's blood went cold. Ever since first contact, there had been resistance movements. People who feared aliens, who believed the Velkari were here to conquer rather than cooperate, who saw any interaction with extraterrestrials as betrayal of humanity. Turn on the news, Sarah said, her words still slightly slow but clear enough. The therapist activated a wall screen. The images that appeared made Sarah's stomach turn. The Geneva First Contact facility was in flames. Protesters, or terrorists, depending on your perspective, had stormed the building. There were casualties, both human and Velkari, and the galactic community's response was swift and devastating. The 3 Velkari ships that had been in orbit began ascending, preparing to leave Earth's atmosphere entirely. They're abandoning first contact. Zyxthar's thought came through, heavy with sorrow and resignation. The consensus among the delegation is that humanity is too dangerous, too unstable for formal relations. No, Sarah said aloud. No, that's not fair. A few extremists don't represent all of us. In Velkari culture, violence against diplomatic guests is considered an unforgivable breach. The fact that your governments could not prevent this attack suggests systemic instability. Sarah felt fury rising, and not just her own. Through the link, she sensed Zyxthar's anger, his frustration, his grief at watching a potential friendship between species collapse. We have to do something, she said. You can barely walk, Sarah. You are still recovering from catastrophic neurological damage. What could we possibly? I'm the xenolinguist who had a stroke during first contact, Sarah interrupted. I'm the human your technology saved. I'm the living proof that our species can work together, can help each other, can bridge impossible gaps. She gripped the parallel bars, forcing herself to stand straighter. I need to address the Velkari Council before they leave, while there's still a chance. You're not ready. The speech centers are still fragile. The stress could cause another stroke. Then I'll have another stroke. But I have to try. Through the link, she felt his resistance crumble, felt him recognize the very human stubbornness he'd been observing for weeks. This is insane. Yes, that's the point. That's what makes us human. What followed was a chaotic sprint through bureaucracy. Elena and Maya arrived at the hospital, summoned by Zyxthar's urgent communication. Human diplomats were contacted. Frantic negotiations ensued. The Velkari Council was preparing to depart in 3 hours. Could they delay for one final communication? The answer, after agonizing minutes, was yes, but barely. Sarah had one chance, one speech, to convince an entire alien civilization that humanity was worth the risk. You can't do this, Dr. Rashid protested as Sarah was transferred to a medical transport. The stress alone. I know the risks, Sarah said, and I accept them. Zyxthar accompanied her in the transport, his presence steady through the neural link. I will help stabilize the pathways during your speech, he thought. But Sarah, I cannot prevent all damage. If you push too hard, if the strain is too much, I know. Stay with me anyway. always. The transport took them to a hastily arranged communication facility near the ruins of the Geneva Center. The Valkyrie Council appeared as holographic projections, 7 tall figures whose skin patterns churned with colors Sarah now understood meant distress, fear, and deep disappointment. Sarah stood before them, supported by a mobility frame on her weak left side, wearing the translation device that would project her words directly into their minds. Elena and Maya watched from the side, both terrified and proud. Human diplomats held their breath. And Zyxthar stood beside her, his mental presence wrapped around her thoughts like armor. "Honored Council," Sarah began, the words coming slowly but clearly. "I am Dr. Sarah Martinez. 6 weeks ago, I suffered a severe stroke while preparing to welcome your delegation to Earth. The damage should have been permanent. The loss of communication should have been complete." She paused, gathering her thoughts, feeling Zyxthar help guide them through the device's pathways. But Ambassador Zyxthar stayed. He used Valkyrie technology to rebuild what my stroke had broken. He spent weeks linked to my mind, teaching me to speak again, to move again, to communicate again. He did this despite having no obligation, despite the risk to himself, despite my being an alien whose biology he didn't fully understand. The council members were still, their attention absolute. "Today, terrorists attacked your facility. They killed and injured people, both human and Valkyrie, in the name of protecting humanity from alien influence. These people are frightened. They are wrong, but they are, unfortunately, human." Sarah felt tears on her face but didn't wipe them away. "Humans are capable of terrible things. We have a long history of violence, of tribalism, of hurting what we fear. But we are also capable of remarkable compassion, of sacrifice, of learning from our mistakes and growing beyond them." She gestured to Zyxthar. "This ambassador saved my ability to communicate with you not because I am Valkyrie, but because communication itself is sacred. He taught me that bridging gaps between minds, between species, between worlds, is worth any effort." Her voice grew stronger, the words flowing more easily as Zyxthar's presence reinforced the neural pathways. "If you leave now, those terrorists win. They succeed in keeping humanity isolated, frightened, alone. But if you stay, if you give us a chance to prove that we can be better than our worst impulses, then maybe we can build something beautiful together." Sarah's left leg began to tremble, the stress taking its toll. She gripped the mobility frame harder. "I am a broken human kept functioning by alien technology and alien friendship. I am proof that we can bridge impossible gaps. Please, don't give up on us yet. We're worth the effort. Let us prove it." The speech ended. Sarah swayed, exhausted. Zyxthar steadied her with one hand, his skin patterns blazing with colors she now recognized as fierce pride and protective concern. The Valkyrie Council was silent. Then the eldest member, an individual whose skin bore the complex patterns of centuries of life, spoke. "Dr. Martinez, your courage is noted. Your words carry weight, but words alone cannot erase the violence we have witnessed." Sarah felt her heart sink. She'd failed, but the elder continued. "However, the bond between you and Ambassador Zyxthar demonstrates something we did not fully understand about humanity. You break easily, your bodies are fragile, your societies unstable, your communication prone to catastrophic failure, but you also rebuild with remarkable determination. This resilience may be worth further study." Hope flickered. "We will remain," the elder decided, "but our presence will be limited, a small diplomatic mission heavily protected. Ambassador Zyxthar will lead it, as he has proven his ability to work with humans even under the most difficult circumstances." The elder's gaze fixed on Sarah. And Dr. Martinez, if you are willing, we would request your service as a liaison. A bridge between our peoples, as you have become a bridge between broken and whole. Sarah felt Zeichsthar's shock through their link, followed immediately by his absolute conviction. Say yes, we do this together. I accept, Sarah said clearly, with honor and gratitude. Part 6. The new normal recovery was not linear. Sarah learned this painfully over the following months. Some days her speech came easily, sentences flowing with almost normal fluency. Other days she struggled with basic words, frustration mounting as her thoughts outpaced her ability to express them. The left side of her body remained weak. She graduated from the mobility frame to a cane, then to walking without visible assistance for short distances. But she tired easily, and the chronic pain from tense muscles was a constant companion. It's not fair, she told Zeichsthar one evening as they worked in the new liaison office established near the rebuilt Geneva facility. I used to run marathons. Now I can barely climb a flight of stairs without needing a break. You used to think in 7 languages simultaneously. Zeichsthar responded through their link, which had never fully faded even as the device integrated. Now you sometimes struggle with one, but you still communicate. You still run, just more slowly. The activity persists even when the ease does not. Is that supposed to be comforting? It is supposed to be true. His skin patterns flickered with gentle amusement. I have learned that humans often prefer truth to comfort. Sarah laughed, a sound that still came more easily than words. You're not wrong. Their office was a hybrid space, half human ergonomics, half Velkari aesthetic. Sarah worked at a desk modified for her mobility limitations, while Zeichsthar occupied a standing workspace that better suited his species' physiology. Together, they reviewed proposals for cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, and diplomatic protocols. It was during one such review session that Maya burst in, home from school and bubbling with excitement. Mom, Zix, you have to see this. Sarah winced at the interruption but smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. See what? Maya activated a holographic display, showing a social media feed that had gone viral. Video of Sarah's speech to the Velkari Council, viewed over 1 billion times. But more than that, thousands of response videos from people around the world. A teenager in Mumbai, born with cerebral palsy, sharing how Sarah's recovery inspired her own physical therapy. A veteran in Chicago with traumatic brain injury, talking about finding hope in seeing someone else navigate language loss. An elderly woman in Tokyo who'd had a stroke watching Sarah's progress and deciding to try therapy again after giving up. You're a symbol, Maya said, her voice full of pride. You're showing people that breaking doesn't mean ending. Through the link, Sarah felt Zeichsthar's profound satisfaction. This is why I stayed, his thought came. Not just to help one human, but to demonstrate what helping means. To show both our species that bridging gaps is possible. Sarah felt tears threaten again, a common occurrence since the stroke. Her emotional regulation had been damaged along with everything else, leaving her more prone to crying, laughing, expressing feelings she might once have contained. I'm not special, she said to Maya. I'm just doing what anyone would do. But that's the point, Mom. Not everyone could do it. Not everyone would keep trying after something so devastating. You're proving that humans are resilient, that we don't give up. Maya glanced at Zeichsthar, and that we're willing to accept help, even from aliens. Over the following months, Sarah's role as liaison evolved. She wasn't just translating between languages anymore. She was translating between entire worldviews, helping Velkari understand human inconsistency and emotional volatility, helping humans understand Velkari communication styles and cultural values. The work was exhausting. Her brain still couldn't handle the hours it once did. She needed frequent breaks, mandatory rest periods, and occasional days where she simply couldn't work at all due to fatigue or neurological stress. But she was doing it, broken and imperfect and struggling, but doing it. "I have a question," she asked Zyxthar one evening, 6 months into her recovery. They were reviewing applications for the first student exchange program, human students who wanted to study on Velkari worlds and vice versa. "Ask, do you regret it? Staying with me instead of returning to your diplomatic duties? You could have been negotiating treaties, establishing trade routes. Instead, you spent months teaching one broken human how to talk again." Zyxthar was silent for a long moment, his skin patterns cycling through complex sequences. Finally, his thought came through, weighted with meaning. "Among my people, there is a saying: true communication is not in speaking perfectly, but in choosing to speak at all. I have learned more about humanity from watching you rebuild yourself than I could have learned from 1,000 treaty negotiations. I have witnessed courage, stubbornness, vulnerability, and strength existing simultaneously in one being. This is profound." "That's a very diplomatic non-answer," Sarah said with a smile. "Then here is the undiplomatic answer. No, Sarah, I do not regret a single moment." Their neural link pulsed with warmth, affection, a bond that transcended species and existed in the space between minds. Part 7. The second crisis. The Velkari student exchange program had been operating successfully for 8 months when the second crisis erupted. This time, it wasn't terrorists. It was something far more insidious: bureaucracy and prejudice wrapped in official language. The Galactic Council, a coalition of 12 advanced civilizations, had been observing Earth's integration into the interstellar community with interest and concern. Now they were calling for a formal evaluation. Earth would need to prove its worthiness for continued contact, or the Velkari would be required to withdraw completely. "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, reading through the evaluation criteria. Her speech had improved significantly, though she still occasionally struggled with complex sentences, especially when stressed. "They're holding us to standards that most of these civilizations didn't meet during their own first contact periods." Zyxthar's skin patterns reflected his frustration. "The Council fears humanity. Your species' capacity for both brilliance and violence unsettles them. They look at your history and see only war, conflict, destruction. And they want us to prove we're worthy." Sarah felt anger rising. "How do we prove something subjective like worthiness?" "By demonstration," Zyxthar said. "The Council has requested that a human representative appear before them to answer questions about your species' intentions and capabilities. This representative will be scrutinized, tested, judged." Sarah's stomach sank as she realized where this was heading. "They want me. You are the visible face of human Velkari cooperation. You represent both human resilience and the success of our collaborative efforts. Yes, they want you." "I can barely walk without getting tired. My speech is still imperfect. I have a visible disability that will make me seem weak to species who don't understand human medicine or neurology." Sarah felt panic rising. "Zix, I'll be representing all of humanity, and I'm broken." Through their link she felt his response, fierce, protective, and absolutely certain. "You are not broken, you are rebuilt. There is a difference." Part 8. Before the Council. The journey to the Council station took 3 weeks. Sarah spent most of that time in the medical bay of the Velkari transport ship, managing the stress-induced symptoms that came from knowing the fate of human-alien relations might depend on her performance. Elena and Maya had stayed on Earth, though they'd wanted to come. Someone needs to keep the planet running while you're saving it, Alina had said with forced lightness. Their goodbyes had been tearful, unspoken fears hanging heavy between them. Now Sarah stood, or rather, leaned on her cane in the observation deck of the Velkari ship, staring at the approaching council station. It was massive, a geometric marvel of architecture that defied human engineering principles. 12 species built this together, Zyxthar said, joining her at the window. Each contributed their unique understanding of physics, mathematics, and art. It represents the best of what galactic cooperation can achieve. No pressure then, Sarah muttered. You face an evaluation, not a trial. Remember that. It feels like a trial. Many important things do. The council chamber was intimidating by design. 12 podiums arranged in a circle, each occupied by a representative of an ancient civilization. At the center, a single platform where the subject of evaluation would stand, or in Sarah's case, stand with visible assistance. Sarah had dressed carefully, professional human business attire that conveyed competence, but comfortable enough to accommodate her physical limitations. The cane she carried was necessary, but it had been crafted by Velkari artisans, a gift from Zyxthar that somehow managed to look both functional and elegant. Dr. Sarah Martinez of Earth, the council speaker announced. You stand before us to represent your species in this evaluation of continued contact. Do you understand the gravity of this proceeding? Sarah took a slow breath, steadying herself both physically and mentally. I do. Then let us begin. The questions started simple. Earth's technological level, population, governmental systems. Sarah answered clearly, drawing on her training as a xenolinguist to frame human complexity in terms other species might understand. Then the questions turned sharper. Your species has a documented history of global conflicts, a counselor from the Cathar civilization stated. Multiple attempts at genocide, nuclear weapons used on your own population, environmental destruction on a planetary scale. Why should we trust such a violent species with access to interstellar society? Sarah felt the weight of humanity's darkest moments pressing down on her. Through the neural link, she felt Zyxthar's steady presence giving her strength. You're right, she said clearly. Humanity has done terrible things. We've hurt each other, destroyed our environment, nearly wiped ourselves out multiple times. Our history is full of violence, stupidity, and short-sighted cruelty. The council members stirred. This wasn't the defensive response they'd expected. But that history also teaches us something, Sarah continued. We learn, we change, we look at our mistakes and we try, imperfectly, inconsistently, but genuinely, to do better. Every major human conflict has led to new international laws, new efforts at cooperation, new recognition of our shared humanity. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The words were coming easier now, the neural pathways strengthened by months of practice and Zyxthar's subtle support through their link. 6 months ago, I had a stroke during our first contact ceremony. Catastrophic neurological damage. By human medical standards, I should have spent the rest of my life unable to speak, unable to walk properly, unable to work. I was broken. Sarah gestured to Zyxthar, standing in the designated area for supporting witnesses. But Ambassador, Zyxthar used Velkari technology to help rebuild me. Not because I was important, not because I was special, but because he believed communication was worth saving. He saw a problem and he chose to help, even though I was an alien, even though the procedure was risky, even though he had no obligation. She looked around at the 12 counselors. That's what first contact means, not perfection. Not some species proving they're worthy of joining the galactic community. It means seeing each other's brokenness and choosing to help anyway. It means recognizing that every species has darkness in their history, but also capacity for growth. Pretty words, the Cathar counselor said dismissively. But words are easy. Actions reveal truth. You're right again, Sarah said. So let me tell you about actions. When terrorists attacked the Velkari facility, when violence threatened to end first contact before it began, humans around the world organized peaceful protests supporting continued relations. Millions of people from every nation demanding we not let fear win. She shifted her weight, her left leg trembling slightly from the strain of standing. When I appeared broken and struggling before the Velkari Council, humans with their own disabilities reached out to support me. They shared their own stories of recovery, of rebuilding, of refusing to let trauma define them. That's human action, messy, emotional, imperfect, but ultimately directed toward connection rather than isolation. Another counselor spoke, this one from the Safrani, a species known for their logic and cold rationality. You present your species' emotionality as a strength. Most civilizations see it as a dangerous liability. Emotions lead to irrationality, conflict, poor decision-making. Sarah felt a spike of frustration and realized it proved the counselor's point. She took a breath, let the emotion exist without letting it control her response. Emotions are dangerous, she agreed. They make us act without thinking, they cloud our judgment, they lead us into conflicts that logic would avoid. But emotions are also what make us care, what make us stand up for others even when it's not rational, what make us help a broken stranger even when there's no logical benefit. She looked directly at the Safrani counselor. Zyksthar's decision to help me wasn't logical. It took him away from more important duties, risked his career, exposed him to unknown complications from treating a species he'd never worked with before. But he did it anyway because he felt it was right. That's what emotions give us, the ability to care about rightness beyond pure logic. Through the link, she felt Zyksthar's surprise, his recognition that she was defending not just humanity but the choice he'd made that had bound them together. The questions continued for hours. Sarah's physical endurance began to flag. Her left leg started shaking uncontrollably. Her speech, which had been clear at the start, began to show signs of strain, slight hesitations, the occasional word that didn't come quite right. A counselor from the Dranaki, amphibious beings who communicated through bioluminescence, noticed her struggle. "Dr. Martinez, you are in distress. Do you require medical assistance?" "I'm managing," Sarah said, though her hands trembled on her cane. "You are clearly not managing. This is precisely the human trait we find concerning, pushing past reasonable limitations out of pride or stubbornness." Sarah wanted to argue to defend herself, but she realized the counselor was right. She was exhausting herself, damaging her recovery, all to prove a point. "You're correct," she admitted. "I am pushing too hard. That is a human flaw. We often confuse endurance with strength, suffering with nobility." She looked around at the council. "But I'm also learning. Learning to ask for help when I need it. Learning that admitting weakness isn't failure." She turned toward Zykthar. Through the link, a simple thought: "I need you." He moved to her side immediately, offering physical support and mental stability through their connection. Several counselors shifted, clearly uncomfortable with this display of interdependence. "This is what human-alien cooperation looks like," Sarah said, leaning into Zyksthar's support. "Not one species standing alone and perfect, but two species helping each other through difficulty. Messy, uncomfortable, but real." The council session was adjourned for deliberation. Sarah collapsed into a chair in the waiting area, exhausted beyond measure. Through the neural link, Zyxthar sent waves of concern and support. "Did I do okay?" she asked aloud, too tired to think clearly through the link. "You were remarkable," Zyxthar said. "Honest, vulnerable. Strong precisely because you admitted weakness. Very human. Is that good or bad? The council will decide. But Sarah, regardless of their decision, I want you to know that I am proud to have witnessed your journey, proud to have helped you rebuild, proud to call you my friend." Through their link, Sarah felt the depth of his sincerity. Tears pricked her eyes, the emotional dysregulation that had been part of her stroke symptoms and had never fully resolved. "Thank you, Zix, for everything, for staying, for believing I was worth the effort. Always." Part 9. The verdict. The council deliberated for 2 full days. Sarah spent that time in the Velkari quarters provided for her, cycling between anxiety, exhaustion, and desperate hope. Maya and Alina sent daily messages from Earth, trying to stay positive but clearly worried. "Whatever happens," Alina said in one video message, "you've already changed things. You've shown people, human and alien, what's possible. That matters more than any council decision." Sarah wanted to believe that, but she also knew that if the council ruled against continued contact, the Velkari would leave. All exchange programs would end. The tentative bridges being built between species would collapse, and it would be, at least partially, her fault. On the 3rd day, the council reconvened. Sarah stood before them again, Zyxthar at her side per their previous agreement. She was better rested now, though still visibly struggling with the physical demands of the proceeding. The council speaker, a Velkari elder who was not Zyxthar but shared his species' commitment to communication, addressed the chamber. "This council has reviewed the testimony of Dr. Sarah Martinez. We have considered her words, her actions, and what she represents about humanity's potential for integration into galactic society." Sarah held her breath. Through the link, she felt Zyxthar doing the same. "The council's decision is divided." Sarah's heart sank. A divided council meant no consensus, which typically meant maintaining the status quo, limited contact, no full integration. "However," the speaker continued, "there is one point on which we are unanimous. Dr. Martinez's testimony was among the most compelling we have witnessed in 3 centuries of first contact evaluations. Not because she presented her species as perfect, but because she presented them as honest." The speaker's gaze settled on Sarah. "You did not hide your species' flaws. You did not pretend your history is anything other than violent and complex. You did not even hide your own limitations, your physical struggles, your neurological damage. This honesty is unusual. Most species attempt to present their best face during evaluation." "I couldn't hide it even if I wanted to," Sarah said. "My limitations are visible." "Precisely. And in that visibility, you taught us something crucial about humanity. You cannot hide what you are. Your emotions are written on your faces. Your physical states are apparent in your movements. Your intentions, while complex, are ultimately readable to those who learn to look." The Cathar counselor who had been most skeptical spoke up. "This transparency may be humanity's greatest asset. Species that can hide their intentions are dangerous. Humans, despite their capacity for violence, broadcast their state clearly. This makes them manageable." Sarah bristled at manageable but held her tongue. "Therefore," the council speaker announced, "the decision is as follows. Earth will be granted provisional status in the galactic community. Full integration will be reconsidered in 10 Earth years, with ongoing evaluation of human behavior, development, and cooperation during that time." Relief flooded through Sarah so powerfully she nearly collapsed. Only Zyxthar's support kept her upright. "However," the speaker continued, there are conditions. First, Earth must establish a permanent liaison office staffed by humans who understand both their species' limitations and potential. Second, this liaison office must include neural-linked partnerships between humans and other species, demonstrating the kind of cooperation Dr. Martinez and Ambassador Zeixthar have exemplified. Sarah's mind raced. They were essentially mandating that other humans go through what she had, forming deep neural bonds with aliens, becoming living bridges between species. Third, the speaker said, Dr. Martinez herself must serve as the primary liaison for a minimum of 5 Earth years, or until her medical condition prevents her from continuing. She has earned the trust of this council through her honesty. We would see that trust maintained through her continued service. 5 years. 5 years of navigating the exhaustion, the physical limitations, the constant pressure of representing an entire species while managing her own recovery. Through the link, Zeixthar sent a question, can you do this? Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. 5 years of struggle, of being constantly visible, of having her every limitation examined and judged. 5 years of missing family events because she was too exhausted, of canceling plans because her body wouldn't cooperate, of being both symbol and warning of what human fragility looked like. But also 5 years of purpose, 5 years of building something larger than herself, 5 years of proving that breaking didn't mean ending, that disability didn't mean inability, that humans could adapt and grow and contribute even when imperfect. I accept, she said clearly. For 5 years or until my body can't do it anymore, I will serve as Earth's primary liaison to the galactic community. The council chamber erupted in complex displays of approval from 12 different species. Through the link, Sarah felt Zeixthar's fierce pride, his joy, his commitment to walk this path alongside her. Together, his thought came. We do this together. Together, she agreed. Part 10. 2 years later, the liaison office on the rebuilt Geneva campus had become Sarah's second home. Her first home was still the apartment she shared with Alina and Maya, but increasingly she found herself sleeping in the office quarters, too exhausted to make the commute home after long days of negotiation and translation. Her physical condition had stabilized but not fully recovered. She used a cane full-time now, had accepted that her left side would always be weaker, always require accommodation. Her speech was good. Most people who didn't know her history wouldn't notice the slight hesitations, the occasional word substitution when her brain couldn't quite find the term she wanted. But she knew, and Zeixthar knew through their link, which had never faded despite the device being fully integrated. You're exhausted, his thought came as she reviewed the latest trade proposal between Earth and 3 galactic community species. I'm always exhausted, Sarah responded. That's just my life now. You could rest, take leave. I could manage the office for a few weeks. We both know that's not true. Half these negotiations only work because I can understand both the human and alien perspectives simultaneously. You're brilliant at understanding Valkyrie needs, but you still struggle with human emotional subtext. Through the link, she felt his rueful agreement. The office door opened and Maya entered, now 17 and impossibly grown up. She'd spent the last year in a student exchange program on the Valkyrie homeworld, learning their language and culture. She moved with teenage grace, but Sarah noted the careful way she observed her mother, checking for signs of fatigue, stress, declining function. "Mom, you look terrible," Maya said bluntly. "Hello to you too, sweetness. I'm serious. When did you last eat something that wasn't from the office synthesizer? When did you last go home and sleep in your actual bed?" Sarah tried to remember, Days blurred together when she was this tired. Tuesday. It's Friday, Mom. You've been here for 3 days straight. Through the link, Zyxthar sent agreement with Maya's assessment. Traitor. There's a lot of work. There's always a lot of work, Maya interrupted. But you're no good to anyone if you burn out completely. Doctor. Rashid said your latest scans showed increased stress on the neural pathways. The device is compensating, but it's not magic. You need rest. Sarah wanted to argue, but looking at her daughter's worried face, she realized Maya was right. She'd been pushing too hard, trying to prove that her disability didn't limit her, that she was just as capable as before the stroke. But that was a lie. She wasn't just as capable. She was differently capable, able to do remarkable things, but not without cost, not without accommodation, not without acknowledging her limits. Okay, she said quietly. I'll go home tonight. I'll take the weekend off. Maya looked skeptical. Promise, promise, will you come with me? We could catch up properly. You've been back from the Velkari homeworld for a week and we've barely talked. That's because you've been living in this office, Maya said, but she smiled. Yes, I'll come home. I want to tell you about what I learned. About how the Velkari handle neurological differences in their own population. That caught Sarah's attention. They have neurological conditions. Not like humans do, but yes. About 8% of Velkari are born with communication difficulties. They can't use the mental speech that's normal for their species. There's a whole infrastructure of accommodation and support. Maya's eyes were bright with excitement. Mom, they've been dealing with disability for centuries. They have so much we could learn from. Through the link, Sarah felt Zyxthar's surprise. I did not realize this would interest you, he thought to Maya. Maya apparently understood enough of Velkari body language to read his reaction. Of course it interests me. My mom had a catastrophic injury and rebuilt herself with alien technology. That's literally the coolest thing that's ever happened in my family. I want to understand how other species handle these things. Sarah felt tears threaten, the emotional dysregulation that still caught her off guard. But this time they were happy tears. Her daughter had taken the worst moment of Sarah's life and found inspiration in it. Had seen disability not as tragedy but as a different way of existing that deserved study and respect. I love you, Sarah said. You know that, right? I know, Mom. Now come on, home. Rest, and tomorrow you can tell me more about what it's like having an alien living in your head. Zyxthar's skin patterns rippled with amusement. I do not live in her head. I merely visit regularly. That's basically the same thing, Maya said with a laugh. Part 11. The final test 3 years into her 5-year commitment, Sarah faced her greatest challenge yet. Not a political crisis or a cultural misunderstanding, but something far more personal. Dr. Rashid's latest evaluation was concerning. The neural pathways created by the Velkari device were showing signs of degradation. Not catastrophic, but significant. The constant stress of her work, combined with the inevitable aging of brain tissue damaged by stroke, was taking its toll. What does this mean? Elena asked, sitting beside Sarah in the doctor's office. Doctor. Rashid pulled up brain scans, showing the affected areas in colors Sarah had learned to dread. The device is still functional, but it's working harder to maintain the same level of communication and motor control. Think of it like a bridge that's carrying more weight than it was designed for. Eventually, that bridge will need reinforcement or replacement. Or it will collapse, Sarah said quietly. I prefer to think in terms of maintenance rather than catastrophe, Dr. Rashid said carefully. But yes, without intervention, we could see significant decline in your speech and motor function over the next year or two. Through the neural link, which had its own pathways, separate from the speech and motor ones. Sarah felt Zyxthar's alarm. He was back on the Velkari homeworld for a diplomatic function but remained connected to her across the light years. I will return immediately, his thought came. We will find a solution. You're in the middle of a treaty negotiation, Sarah thought back. You can't just leave. Watch me. But before Zyxthar could make good on that promise, the situation escalated. A delegation from the Galactic Council arrived on Earth, requesting an emergency meeting. The subject: Sarah's fitness to continue as Earth's primary liaison. They know, Elena said as they prepared for the meeting. Someone from the hospital must have reported your condition to the Council. Of course they know, Sarah said bitterly. They've been watching me for 3 years, waiting for me to fail, to prove that humans are too fragile for this work. You haven't failed. Not yet. But I'm failing now, aren't I? My brain is giving out. The very tool that let me do this job is degrading. Sarah sat heavily, her left leg trembling with fatigue. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not fit for this anymore. Elena grabbed her hand fiercely. Stop it. You've spent 3 years building bridges between species. You've facilitated dozens of successful negotiations. You've trained 15 other human liaisons who are now working across the galaxy. That's not failure, Sarah. That's extraordinary success. Success that's ending because my body can't keep up with what my mind wants to do. Then we find another way. We always find another way. That's what you taught me when you had your stroke and decided to trust alien technology to rebuild your brain. That's what you taught Maya when you showed her that disability doesn't mean inability. That's what you teach every single person who looks at you and sees someone who refuses to let trauma define them. The meeting with the council delegation was as difficult as Sarah had feared. 3 counselors had made the journey, including the skeptical Cathar who had questioned humanity's worthiness years ago. Dr. Martinez, the Cathar counselor said without preamble, we have received concerning medical reports regarding your neurological condition. The device that has allowed you to function is failing. This raises questions about your ability to continue serving as Earth's primary liaison. Sarah met the counselor's gaze steadily. The device is degrading, yes, but I'm still functional. I can still perform my duties. For how long? Weeks? Months? What happens when you can no longer communicate effectively? When the strain of this work causes complete failure of the device. Through the link, Sarah felt Zyxthar arrive back in Earth's orbit, racing toward the meeting, but he was still minutes away. I don't know, Sarah admitted. I don't know how long I can keep doing this. I don't know if the device can be reinforced or if it will catastrophically fail. I don't know if my body will keep cooperating or if one day I'll wake up back where I started, unable to speak, unable to walk, unable to serve. The counselors exchanged looks that Sarah couldn't read. But here's what I do know, she continued, voice gaining strength. I know that 3 years ago, I stood before your council and asked you to judge humanity not by our perfection, but by our willingness to keep trying despite our flaws. I know that every day since then, I've demonstrated that commitment, showing up, doing the work, bridging gaps between species even when it hurt, even when I was exhausted, even when it would have been easier to quit. Sarah stood, using her cane for support but standing nonetheless. You're asking if I'm fit to continue. I'm asking if you're willing to practice what you preach. If you truly believe that species should be judged by their growth rather than their limitations. Because if you don't, if you remove me from this position because my disability has progressed, then you're telling every human with a limitation that they're not worthy of serving their species or yours. The Cathar counselor's expression was unreadable. You present this as a moral issue. It is a moral issue. It's about whether we accommodate disability or exclude it, whether we value what people can do or focus on what they can't, whether we build a galactic community that's accessible to all species in all their variations, or whether we only accept the perfect. "You are not perfect," the Cathar noted. "No, I'm really not. I'm broken in ways that will never fully heal. I'm struggling every single day just to function at a level most people take for granted. And I'm still doing this job better than most fully able humans could, because I understand on a bone-deep level what it means to need help, to ask for help, to build connections across impossible gaps." Zyxthar burst into the room, having literally run from his ship's landing pad. His skin patterns were ablaze with protective fury. "Dr. Martinez's condition is a medical matter, not a political one," he said, his mental voice sharp. "If the device requires maintenance or replacement, Velkari medical teams will provide it. If she needs additional support to continue her work, we will arrange it. But removing her from her position due to disability is discrimination, pure and simple." "Ambassador Zyxthar," the council speaker said calmly, "your loyalty to Dr. Martinez is noted, but the concerns remain valid. The primary liaison position requires someone who can bridge gaps between species," Zyxthar interrupted, "which Sarah does brilliantly. Requires someone who understands the challenges of first contact, which Sarah lives daily. Requires someone both species can trust to be honest about limitations and capabilities, which Sarah has proven repeatedly." Through their link, Sarah felt his absolute conviction, his unwavering belief in her worth, her ability, her right to continue this work despite, or perhaps because of, her disability. The council delegation conferred quietly among themselves. Sarah stood, trembling slightly, exhausted but determined. Zyxthar moved to stand beside her, offering support both physical and mental. Finally, the council speaker addressed them. "Your points are well made, both of you. The council will take them under advisement, but Dr. Martinez, understand that we will require regular medical evaluations. If your condition deteriorates to the point where it compromises your work, we will need to discuss alternatives." "That's fair," Sarah said. "I would expect nothing less." After the delegation left, Sarah collapsed into a chair, utterly spent. Zyxthar sat beside her, his skin patterns cycling through colors of concern and relief. "Thank you," Sarah said aloud, "for coming back, for defending me." Always his thought came, fierce and certain. "We are bonded, Sarah. Neural links do not break simply because they become inconvenient." "The device is failing," she said quietly. "Rashid says it might only last another year or two before it needs major intervention. Then we will intervene. Velkari medical technology has advanced significantly in the 3 years since your initial procedure. We can strengthen the pathways, reinforce the device, perhaps even create secondary support systems. Or," Sarah said slowly, "I could accept that this body has done what it can, that 3 years of service is enough, that it's time to step back and let someone else take over." Through the link she felt Zyxthar's shock, quickly followed by understanding. "You are considering retirement. I'm considering rest. Actual rest, not the weekend breaks that Maya forces me to take. I'm considering going home to my wife and daughter and spending time being a family instead of a symbol. I'm considering that maybe proving humans can rebuild after breaking doesn't require me to break myself again and again until there's nothing left to rebuild." Zyxthar was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you want, Sarah?" "Not what Earth needs, not what the Council wants, not what would be symbolically appropriate. What do you want?" Sarah closed her eyes, checking in with herself honestly for perhaps the first time in years. "I want to keep doing meaningful work. but I want to do it at a pace my body can sustain. I want to mentor the other liaisons instead of carrying the full weight myself. I want to go home at night and have dinner with my family. I want to be something other than the human who had a stroke and rebuilt herself with alien technology. Those desires are reasonable, Zyxthar thought, perhaps even wise. But the Council is not wrong to value your unique perspective and experience. You have built something remarkable here, Sarah. Walking away entirely would be a loss for Earth, for the galactic community, and I think for you. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at her friend. What are you suggesting? A transition, Zyxthar said aloud, his voice thoughtful. You remain as primary liaison officially, but you delegate more of the day-to-day work to the team you've trained. You focus on major negotiations and policy decisions, the work that truly requires your specific expertise. You acknowledge your limitations and build around them rather than constantly fighting through them. It was so sensible that Sarah wondered why she hadn't thought of it herself. Except she knew why. Because asking for accommodation still felt like admitting defeat, even after years of living with disability. The ingrained human belief that needing help meant weakness was hard to overcome. I'd need to restructure the entire liaison office, she said slowly. Then we restructure it, together. Through their link, Sarah felt his commitment, his willingness to adapt his own work to support hers. Their neural bond had started as a medical necessity, but it had become something far deeper, a true partnership that transcended species. Okay, Sarah said, let's try it your way. Part 12. The new path. The restructuring took 6 months. Sarah reduced her direct negotiation work from 6 days a week to 3. She spent the other days training liaisons, developing policy frameworks, and writing documentation that would outlive her time in the position. Elena noticed the change immediately. You're home more, she said one evening as they cooked dinner together, or rather, as Elena cooked and Sarah provided commentary from a chair at the kitchen counter. And you're actually here mentally, not just physically present while your mind is on some diplomatic crisis. I'm trying, Sarah said. Trying to remember that I'm a person, not just a position. Good, because Maya and I would like to keep the person. Maya, now in her final year of secondary school, had decided to pursue xenoanthropology at university. She'd spent her adolescence watching her mother navigate disability and alien cooperation, and it had shaped her worldview profoundly. I want to study how different species handle biological variation, Maya explained over dinner. How they think about disability, illness, difference. Because what you've been doing, Mom, that's not just about humans learning from aliens. It's about everyone learning new ways to think about ability and limitation. Sarah felt pride surge through her chest. Her daughter had taken the worst moment of their family's life and found meaning in it. Purpose. Hope. The medical evaluation of her neural device came 6 months later. Dr. Rashid, working with a Velkari medical team, had developed a plan to reinforce the degrading pathways. It's not a cure, Dr. Rashid explained as Sarah prepared for the procedure. We can't restore your brain to pre-stroke condition. But we can strengthen the device's connections, potentially extending its functionality for another 5 to 10 years. And after that, Sarah asked, after that we'll likely need another intervention. This is going to be a chronic condition, Sarah, something you manage rather than cure. Are you prepared for that? Sarah thought about it. 5 years ago, the idea of never fully recovering would have devastated her. But now, after years of living with disability, of building a life around it rather than despite it, the answer came easily. I'm prepared. This is my life now. Chronic management, ongoing adaptation, perpetual accommodation. I can live with that. The reinforcement procedure was less dramatic than the original device installation. Sarah was conscious throughout, feeling the strange sensation of neural pathways being strengthened, connections being reinforced. Zyxthar maintained the link the entire time, his mental presence a steady anchor. When it was done, the improvement was immediate. Words came more easily. Her left leg felt more responsive. The constant exhaustion that had plagued her for months eased significantly. "How do you feel?" Dr. Rashid asked. "Like myself," Sarah said, marveling at the clarity of her own voice. "Not like before the stroke, but like the self I've become, the version of me that exists with the device, with the limitations, with the accommodations. That self, but stronger." Through the link, Zyxthar sent profound satisfaction. "You have learned what took my species centuries to understand. Healing is not about returning to what was, but about building what can be." Part 13. 4 years forward. Sarah's 5-year commitment ended on a crisp autumn day in Geneva. The ceremony recognizing her service was attended by representatives from 37 species, including all 12 members of the Galactic Council. She stood at the podium, no longer needing the cane for short distances, though she kept one nearby as backup, and addressed the assembled crowd. "When I accepted this position, I was recently recovered from a catastrophic stroke. I could barely walk, could barely speak, and had no idea if I could actually do this work. I accepted anyway, partly out of duty, partly out of stubbornness, and partly because Ambassador Zyxthar believed I could do it, and I trusted his judgment more than my own fears." She looked at Zyxthar, standing in the front row, his skin patterns displaying colors she now understood meant deep affection and pride. "These 5 years have been the hardest of my life. They've also been the most meaningful. I've helped negotiate 12 major treaties. I've trained 47 human liaisons who now serve across the galaxy. I've demonstrated that humans can contribute to the galactic community not despite our limitations, but in ways that honor both our capabilities and our constraints." Sarah paused, gathering her thoughts. Her speech was clear now, reinforced neural pathways functioning well, but she'd learned to pace herself, to build in breaks, to acknowledge when she needed support. "But more than any specific achievement, I've learned something crucial about what it means to be human in a galaxy of alien species. We break easily. Our bodies are fragile, our emotions are volatile, our societies are messy. But we also rebuild with remarkable creativity. We look at broken things and see potential rather than loss. We take catastrophic damage and find ways to adapt, to grow, to become something new." She gestured around the room. "Every species here has its own strengths and limitations. The Velkari communicate beautifully but struggle with rapid environmental adaptation. The Cathar are brilliantly logical but sometimes miss emotional nuances. The Safrani build incredible technology but have difficulty with abstract art. We are all limited. We are all, in our own ways, broken. The question isn't whether we're perfect. It's whether we're willing to help each other with our imperfections. Whether we can build a galactic community that values what we can do together more than what we can't do alone." Sarah stepped back from the podium, signaling the end of her prepared remarks. But then she added, spontaneously, "I'm not retiring. I'm transitioning to a senior advisory role because this work matters and I still have things to contribute. But I'm also going home to be with my family, to rest when I need rest, to acknowledge that I am a person with limitations who deserves accommodation. Both of those things can be true. I can be disabled and valuable, limited and essential, broken and whole." The applause that followed was overwhelming, not just from humans but from aliens of every species present. Through the neural link, Sarah felt Zeichsthar's emotions so strongly they nearly became her own: pride, affection, gratitude, and something deeper. The bone-deep satisfaction of having witnessed another being's transformation and knowing he'd played a part in it. After the ceremony, during the reception, Sarah found herself surrounded by young humans who'd applied to the liaison training program. They asked questions about the work, about living with alien technology in their brains, about managing disability while serving in demanding roles. "Is it hard?" a young woman named Rachel asked. She had a mobility impairment from a childhood accident and walked with forearm crutches. "It's incredibly hard," Sarah said honestly. "There are days when I wonder if I'm actually making a difference or just stubborn refusing to quit. Days when my body won't cooperate and I'm frustrated beyond words. Days when I want to scream at the unfairness of having a brilliant mind trapped in a malfunctioning body." "But," Rachel prompted, "but those hard days are mixed with extraordinary ones. Days when I facilitate a breakthrough in negotiations that seemed impossible. Days when I help two species understand each other for the first time. Days when someone tells me that seeing me work gave them hope for their own recovery, their own adaptation, their own future." Sarah met Rachel's eyes. "The hard days don't cancel out the meaningful ones. They coexist. Do you think someone like me could do this work?" Rachel asked quietly. "I think someone like you might do it better than most," Sarah said, "because you already understand that limitations require creativity. That accommodation isn't weakness but intelligence. That asking for help is a skill, not a failure. Those lessons took me decades to learn. You're already there." Through the link, Sarah felt Zeichsthar approach before she saw him. He'd been making diplomatic rounds but was now returning to her side. "I have a proposition," he said aloud, his mental voice reaching only Sarah through their private link. "The Velkari homeworld has requested that we establish a permanent cultural exchange center. They want someone who understands both species to lead it. Someone who has lived in both worlds, who carries both perspectives." "Zix, I just said I'm transitioning to less intensive work. The position would be based on Earth," he interrupted. "Half-time work schedule, full support staff, flexible accommodations. You would design programs, mentor exchange students, facilitate cultural education. It would use all your skills without requiring the physical and mental demands of active negotiation." Sarah felt hope stir. This was exactly the kind of meaningful work she wanted, using her experience and expertise without destroying herself in the process. "And you?" she asked. "Where would you be in this arrangement?" Zeichsthar's skin patterns rippled with colors Sarah had learned meant amusement and affection. "The Velkari homeworld has requested I serve as their co-director. We would work together, as we have for 5 years. The neural link means we are uniquely positioned to model the kind of deep cooperation the Exchange Center would promote." Through their link, Sarah felt his unspoken question: "Will you keep working with me? Keep building this partnership that has become the center of both our lives?" "Yes," she thought back. "Always yes." Epilogue. 10 years after first contact, Dr. Sarah Martinez Chen stood in the Earth Velkari Cultural Exchange Center, watching students from both species work together on a joint project about comparative neurology. Her daughter Maya, now Dr. Maya Chen, led the session, her expertise in xenoanthropology put to brilliant use. Sarah's hair had more gray now. She was 53 years old, 10 years past her stroke, and her body showed the accumulated effects of a decade with neurological disability. She used a cane more consistently now, her left leg having progressively weakened despite the device reinforcements. Her speech was still good, but she tired more easily, needed more breaks. She was also happy, genuinely, deeply happy in ways she hadn't been even before the stroke. "Mom," Maya called, waving her over. "Come look at what the students discovered." Sarah walked over carefully, her cane clicking softly on the floor. A Velkari student named Kurisin and a human student named James had collaborated on a visualization of neural pathway formation in both species. "It's remarkable," James explained excitedly. "The Velkari form communication pathways differently than humans, but when you have neural link technology like you and Ambassador Zyxthar use, the pathways start to mirror each other, like your brains are learning to speak the same language." "That's exactly what happens," Sarah confirmed. Through her link with Zyxthar, still strong after a decade, though they'd learned to give each other privacy when needed, she felt his attention focus on the conversation from his office down the hall. "They've discovered what took us years to understand," his thought came. "That true communication changes both parties." Maybe that's the real message of first contact, Sarah thought back. Not that we need to be perfect before reaching out to other species, but that reaching out changes us, shapes us, makes us something new. Alina appeared in the doorway, carrying lunch for Sarah. After 10 years of watching her wife navigate disability and diplomacy, she'd become fiercely protective of Sarah's health and well-being. "Time for a break," Alina announced. "You've been on your feet for 2 hours. I was just." "You were just about to take a break and eat lunch with your wife," Alina said firmly. "The students will survive without you for 30 minutes. Sarah laughed and let Alina guide her to their private office. Through the windows, she could see the city of Geneva, the Alps in the distance, and beyond that, the stars where 3 Velkari ships still orbited, maintaining humanity's connection to the wider galaxy. "Do you ever miss it?" Alina asked as they ate. The high-stakes negotiations, the council meetings, being at the center of everything. Sarah considered the question. "Sometimes, but mostly I'm grateful for this, for work that matters without consuming me, for time with you and Maya, for being able to mentor the next generation instead of carrying everything myself." "Good answer," Alina said with a smile. She reached across the table and took Sarah's right hand, the strong one, the one that hadn't been affected by the stroke. "I'm proud of you for everything you've built, everything you've survived, everything you've become." Sarah squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of the wedding ring she'd worn for 25 years. "I couldn't have done it without you, or Zix, or Maya, or the countless people who helped accommodate my disability instead of seeing it as a disqualification." "Speaking of Zix," Alina said, "he told me he's planning to return to the Velkari homeworld for a few months. Something about a medical conference on neural link technology." Through their link, Sarah felt Zyxthar's guilty amusement at being caught planning without telling her directly. "You weren't supposed to tell her yet," his thought came. "You should have told me yourself," Sarah thought back. "I am telling you, just via Alina." Sarah laughed aloud, making Alina raise an eyebrow. "Sorry, he's being evasive through the link." "Tell him he's not subtle," Alina said. "And that we'll miss him, but the break might be good for both of you. You've been neurologically linked for 10 years. That's longer than some marriages." "She has a point," Zyxthar admitted. "Perhaps some distance would be healthy." But through the link, Sarah felt his reluctance. They'd been constant companions for a decade, their minds intertwined in ways that went beyond friendship or professional partnership. The thought of breaking that connection, even temporarily, felt like losing a limb. "We don't have to," Sarah thought. "The link works across light years. It'll be weaker, but it'll still be there." "You are certain?" "I'm certain. You're part of me now, Zix. Distance won't change that." Through the link came a wave of affection so profound it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Alina, watching her wife's face, smiled knowingly. "He's being sentimental again, isn't he?" "Very," Sarah confirmed. That evening, after the students had left and the center had quieted, Sarah stood in the main hall with Zyxthar. In the decades since her stroke, this space had become sacred to her, a physical manifestation of what was possible when species chose cooperation over isolation. "Do you remember the day we met?" Sarah asked. "You were preparing to give a speech," Zyxthar said. "You were nervous, excited, hopeful." His skin patterns shifted, and then your brain broke and everything changed. "Everything changed," Sarah agreed. "I lost the ability to communicate, to move normally, to be the person I'd spent 50 years becoming. It was the worst day of my life. And it was also the beginning of something extraordinary. I met you. I learned what real cooperation looks like. I discovered strengths I didn't know I had and accepted weaknesses I'd spent a lifetime denying. I became a different person, not better than who I was before, not worse, just different." Rebuilt. Zyxthar moved closer, his tall frame casting long shadows in the evening light. "I have a confession. Oh, when I first decided to help you, it was out of guilt. I felt responsible for your stroke, even though logically I knew it was not my fault. I thought if I could fix you, I could fix my guilt." Sarah waited, sensing more coming. "But somewhere in those first weeks of treatment, my motivation changed. I was not trying to fix you anymore. I was trying to know you, to understand you, to witness what a human looked like when broken and rebuilding. And I discovered that you were remarkable not despite your damage, but inclusive of it. The stroke did not diminish you. It revealed you." Through the link, Sarah felt the absolute truth of his words. "You saved my life, Zyx." "No," he corrected gently. "I gave you tools. You saved your own life by choosing to use them, by refusing to accept that breaking meant ending, by demonstrating daily that humans are survivors, adapters, rebuilders." His skin patterns pulsed with colors of deep respect. "You saved my understanding of what strength means, what communication means, what it means to truly know another being." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, the emotional dysregulation that had never fully resolved, leaving her more openly emotional than she'd been before the stroke. But she didn't try to hide it. Vulnerability had become one of her greatest strengths. "Thank you," she said simply, "for staying, for witnessing, for being my friend." "Always," came the thought through their link. "We are bonded, you and I, neural pathways and shared experiences and a decade of knowing each other's minds. This does not break. This does not fade. This is permanent." "Good," Sarah thought back. "Because I'm not done rebuilding yet, and I'd like you there for the next part too." "Where are we going?" "Forward," Sarah thought, together, broken and whole, limited and capable, human and Valkyrie, forward. Through the windows of the Cultural Exchange Center, the stars were emerging in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, civilizations were watching Earth, still deciding what to make of humanity, still uncertain whether humans were more threat than promise, more dangerous than valuable. But Sarah knew the truth that those distant observers would eventually learn. Humans were both, dangerous and valuable, threatening and promising, capable of terrible violence and extraordinary compassion. They were a species that broke easily and rebuilt stubbornly, that suffered catastrophically and survived remarkably. They were, in other words, exactly what the galaxy needed. A reminder that perfection wasn't required for contribution, that limitations didn't preclude excellence, that being broken and being whole weren't opposites but could coexist in the same being. Sarah Martinez Chen, survivor, xenolinguist, liaison and symbol, looked up at those stars and smiled. Her left leg ached. Her brain was tired. Tomorrow she'd need rest, accommodation, support to do even basic tasks. But tonight she stood in a building that existed because she'd refused to give up. Stood beside an alien who'd become her closest friend. Stood as living proof that humanity belonged among the stars not despite their fragility, but because of what they built in response to it. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. The end.